You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 547, our coverage of two Bad Batch episodes, Identity Crisis and Point of No Return. We are almost at the very tail end of the final season of the Bad Batch, and if things couldn't get more sober, they gave us these two episodes, and what a blessing it was. And to talk about all the blessings and that we have is with you tonight, Jonesy. Thank you, Jonesy, for being here. How are you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic, and you're right. All of a sudden, we took a turn to the dark side of everything. I mean, with the trailer that dropped today and everything else going on, it's like, man, we have had a severe mood shift in Star Wars just in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, but yeah, and what you're referring to, Tales of the Empire came out. The trailer came out today as we're recording this tonight, and you and I are going to break that down here this weekend. So more on that a little bit later. But before we get into our full breakdown of both of these episodes, how about some quick shout outs for folks?
Yeah, thanks to our now part of the tribe members on Patreon: Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante Risk, Justin Jackson, Chuckman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn, and their Delusions Granger members: Rod, CJ, Alex, Steve, and Daz, and all of the wonderful folks out in the live stream already: Kathy, J Dubs, What Up versus CPU, and Rural Farm Boy just came in. So good to see y'all.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Wow, we got a Rural Farm Boy sighting. He doesn't make it out much.
That's pretty awesome.
We're a sublight speed drop by chat. So thanks for being here, man. If you guys want to, you can also head out to, if you're not already a subscriber to our YouTube channel, head out to cantinacast.com/YouTube or youtube.com/cantinacast. Either way will get you there. Please like, subscribe, comment on all the videos too. We try to get to all the comments and reply to the comments as they come in, even after the show's aired. Definitely like the engagement there. So head out there, do that stuff. And why don't we get started? So what we normally do is kind of give our initial thoughts, impressions, and then we'll go kind of a deep dive, almost a line-by-line breakdown of the episode. So just in general, I guess if you want to give me your thoughts on maybe both of these episodes, or if you want to wait till we get to the second one, you can certainly do that. But the one thing I want to just ask you up front is these episodes are not necessarily connected, right? Usually when we get a two-parter, there's something that kind of trails off and connects the two. Didn't really feel the same, but at the same time, they were kind of in that same spirit, in that same vein. But I guess kind of your thoughts on maybe why they decided to do these two episodes back to back like this.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why might be just to show where Emerie is at compared to when Omega left her. I think that's the one connection I was making in this episode between these two episodes that I think is probably important to see where Emerie is at. And you have both of those right together. So when we jump into this next week and presumably we'll have their reunion, you have a very different place where Dr. Carr is coming from. And, initial thoughts on this episode were, man, disturbing, I think, for Identity Crisis. I mean, it was really uncomfortable to watch these kids in captivity, very somber, just no hope. I mean, it was, I think J-Dubs in Discord made the comment that, like, man, this was kind of tough to watch. I know Stephanie had the same comment. It was really, really dark and very strange for us watching Star Wars and having this kind of association with kids and really this much despair. Did you have that kind of response to this, like in those moments, or did that make you uncomfortable at all, or what was your initial response to this?
Oh, yeah.
Psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a father, right, and anyone who has kids or just, anybody who has a heart and sympathy, right, should feel like, hey, this was a little disturbing and uneasy to watch at times. But at the same time, I think the reason why they did this is the payoff that we're going to get by the very end. I think I posted something similar today on social media that it felt like they were filling a gap. Like, we get it, right? You want to root for the clones that are being experimented on in Tantus. You want to root for Omega because she's the main character. We've invested 3 years of our lives with her, right? So that makes sense. But beyond that, there's not a lot of other, I mean, maybe the liberation of the clones, and there are a lot of those guys, But I always felt like there was just something we needed more, right? We needed to be just vested just a little bit more on what was going on in Tantus. And this not only delivered on that, but if we do get the cavalry arriving in the final season finale and everybody gets liberated and everybody's free and we kind of have a happy ending, not really because the Empire's still around kind of scenario, it's going to be that much more emotionally charged, right, when all this happens. Because now we've got these poor kids and we've got somebody like Emerie who we can sympathize with. We can see the light in her. That's probably going to play into all this. So I think that was why they snuck this one in here. You probably could have slotted it around maybe before or after this episode. But it definitely brings a lot more emotional weight to the very end. I think that's kind of the reason. So yeah, I totally loved every part of that.
Yeah, and I think we're also starting to get some clarity around some of our questions earlier in the season, right? About what are they testing with the blood, right? And where are they getting the donors from? So the high M count donor, who is that coming from? It seems like it's coming from the kids, maybe a little bit from Palpatine in the past, but primarily now it seems to be from other Force users that they're just picking up on the side of the road. The receivers do tend to be the clones. It kind of raises some questions about Omega and whether she does have a higher M count or not. It seems like they suggested. I think also we also got a really clear answer to your question last week. Does everybody have an M count analyzer? And I guess the answer is yes. Everybody does.
Right.
So I'm assuming Asajj Ventress had one on her ship as well.
Yeah. I told you, they have them at CVS. You just it's in the back, like the hair dye selection.
It's as common as a COVID test, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's got to be it.
Yeah.
No, and so here, I got some thoughts, some general thoughts around just the show. And first off, like I get that, we've always said Star Wars needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell the story that they want and we want, right? Maybe more what they want. But it really kind of sucks that this is season 3 and the final season, because it does feel like they really have got their legs under them now. We've got really sounded grounded feet here. The visuals are great. The sound is great. The FX are great. The pacing, the directing, the writing, the acting is really good. And I wouldn't say, it felt like maybe in seasons 1 and 2, we had pockets of that. We certainly saw it out of season 1. I think you and I talked about this show has so much potential going for it. And it just continued to mature over time. And now we're at a point where even the harshest critics of the show have watched this season and gone, okay, it took me a while to get there, but man, this is some really good stuff that they're putting out. And I think that's fine. That's going to bode well for when we go back and look at, what was the Bad Batch and how was it received. I think we're all going to look back, and season 3 is really going to carry that for a lot of people. Not like us. We've all been in it since season 1, but they just really, it kind of sucks that we're just now here. And the mythology itself is so cruel now, because we're getting more answers is probably the main reason. But just tying that back into all the stuff that we know is about to happen in the future of Star Wars and getting it now in the Bad Batch, that's all been a blessing. So I guess what I'm saying is I wish it would have been maybe another season, 4 season. I'm kind of wanting season 4, season 5, but I get it. It's got to go at some point.
The thing to remember is after this season or after the series is done, there's still 10 plus years of the Empire left. To your point, there's still a lot of story and there's still a lot of things that'll continue on past this series that you could dive into. And, whether it was the Bad Batch or somebody else, I still think it's really fertile territory for us to come back to.
Yeah. And as far as the episodes themselves, like individually, Identity Crisis, again, we talked about a very emotional kind of episode. I was trying to think, there are not many. You could probably count the number of Star Wars animated episodes on 2 hands, maybe 1 hand, but definitely on 2 hands, that left you just kind of like in awe or shocked, right? Shook, if you will, because of just the emotions that were being drawn out of you as you were watching this thing. And this is definitely one of those. So really appreciated that. And I love that the title, of course, was, Identity Crisis, because we could clearly see that Emerie was struggling with what was right and what was wrong. And we'll get into that more in a little bit, because I don't think she knew what she was signing up for.
Absolutely. The actress performance was absolutely stellar. Like, you could hear the quiver in the voice. It was fantastic.
Yeah. As far as point of no return, I hate to say we told you so, or what we kind of did. Like, I think we'd said that, would she turn herself in, right? At the very end, would she turn herself in to kind of go back to Tantus with the hopes that they could track her? And then all that almost played out verbatim, because she knew they weren't going to kill her. We said that as much. No one knows how to get there. So having somebody on the inside is probably an advantage. And I think from Omega's mind, that's definitely where she's coming from. Like, I have a better chance of, at least while I'm there, I've gotten out once, I'm sure I can get out again, right? It's not the end of it. So it makes sense that she would do that. But I also said that she would do this because it was the most selfless thing that she could do, and not to lean too much into the whole midichlorian count and her potentially being a Jedi, although that's where I want it to go. Like, this was a very Jedi-ish act to do. I mean, it's a good person act. Anybody would kind of do this, but especially given the context of what we're talking about here, it felt like this was something that a Jedi would do. And so it was very selfless in that regard. Definitely appreciate that Omega did that. And she just continues to impress, like in both of these episodes. I mean, we'll get into the whole, symbology of her, putting the Tuca Doll down and what it means to leave Echo's Tech's glasses and all that. But these are very mature kinds of actions and things that she's doing that you wouldn't expect from her maybe at this age. And yet she's lived a pretty hard life already. So she's grown up really quick, and she's literally grown up right in front of our eyes over the last 3 years. So she just continues to impress. Like, she's an amazing character, and I hope we get to see more of her later down the road.
Yeah, I think the real question we're going to be left with is, we no longer have Razor Crest moments. We have Havoc Marauder moments.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't call that one at some point.
I'm still actually kind of beside myself they destroyed it.
Well, I mean
that thing is wrecked.
It is wrecked. It coming back, that's for sure. It's similar to the Razor Crest, but if they did it to the Razor Crest, that pretty much opened the door for them. No ship is safe at this point except the Falcon. That would be my guess. Everything else is up for destruction should they want to do so. All right, let's get into Identity Crisis. And we open on this beautiful, like, city in the mountains kind of thing. Of course, there's this little kid there using the Force. He accidentally breaks a vase because he can't control himself. And we hear those things about, oh, they're strange, they're cursed, they're gifted. And I think there's two guys talking about, we can't say that stuff here. It brings trouble, right? So this gets us, lets us know that the general populace is aware that if there is talk about Force sensitives, or maybe just these gift and cursed people, that it could invoke the Empire to suddenly show up at your doorstep, and they don't want to do that, right? They don't want to start whispering rumors of kids being Force sensitive, because that will invite the Empire. Although it doesn't bother this crummy looking Aqualish guy, who, by the way, his belt looked like Han Solo's same holster. Right. I don't know if that's they probably got it at the same place. But
what is it with Aqualish? Like, every Aqualish is evil.
Have
you noticed that? Like, every single one of them is bad.
They are. They were all bad in Book of Boba Fett, and they continue to be so. So I hate them all. So he decides he's going to go pick up and call 1-800, class 1 bounty.
Dial a bounty hunter, yeah.
Dial a bounty hunter. Calls up and says somebody may be interested. And at that point, I was like, okay, it can't be anybody else at this point but Cad Bane. But more on that here in a little bit. So we swing over to Mount Tantus, and this is where we get Hemlock. He's kind of he's up in his room, and that what is it called? I forget what that. Well, it's not the chain.
It kind of looked like it was the vault, but then it's not the vault, because he's like in a chamber of sorts.
Yeah,
like it's got a window out to the scenery of Tantus. It was really odd.
Yeah, I assume it's all kind of part of the same area, maybe some high security level area, but definitely looked like it was a CX clone that was in there that he was looking at. The data pad looked as much when you kind of pull it off. So maybe they're building a new one. I think he said something a little bit later about the reinforcements aren't ready. The next CX clone that they've got in process isn't done yet. Still needs a few more minutes. But then he walks out, and then we get him meeting up with Scorch and Emerie. And this is where Emerie, she comes out and is like, hey, the project's not going anywhere, right? You just got rid of the project manager, Nala say. You got rid of the brains of the Necromancer project. And because it's not moving forward, I think I should be that person, right? I've earned that position. And I think she's coming from a very sincere place here. Like, I don't think she's aware of what Project Necromancer truly is. She has a place in this. She has a part in the overall thing, but I don't think she understands the details. And I think that becomes very apparent once she gets into and sees the specimens. But I think she's coming at this as being like, hey, this is my chance. This is my opportunity to step up, make my name here in the Empire. I've certainly earned it. I've literally worked my way up from the ground, or, I was probably a kid brought in as a clone. And she feels this is probably, almost, it's hers for the taking, if you will. So I guess let me pause right there. But I saw some folks saying that maybe why would she want to get into this project? But I don't believe that she knew anything about Project Necromancer, and I think that's why we get the the behaviors and the reactions that we get from her a little bit later.
Yeah, it's the ambition of Emerie Carr coming across. And if you think about it, from where she grew up in Camino, everything was very scientifically driven. It was very achievement driven. And then when she joined up with the Empire and with Hemlock, it was even more so, right? Of continuing to push the envelope, learn, do things, do different things, experiment, achieve something unique, achieve something that you shouldn't be able to achieve, right? And then be able to do it. And to have the chief scientist, nameplate on the outside of your office is a really big deal. It's what she's been working towards. She's no longer in the shadow of Nala Se. She's not the assistant. She's not the clone assistant. She's the one running the lab right now. She's the one, she's the one in control, the one in charge. And that's a big deal. And I mean, a lot of people feel that way, right? They want to continue to achieve something in their career. And this is what it is for her. And I'm with you. She doesn't know the scope of everything that's going on. And clearly she doesn't, because he has to bring her up to speed on what Project Necromancer is. She hasn't heard it. She's been testing things, and she's just been doing it without any kind of questioning of that authority or questioning of their motives or anything else. She's just been very task-oriented, and doesn't mean that she doesn't have a heart, but it's also hasn't been something she's had to concern herself with. And then until Omega showed up, that was the first time she maybe had those types of feelings or those concerns or those question marks start to come up. But also that kind of went away when Omega left. And so, she didn't have to worry about it as much until it was front and center in front of her again with a whole new batch of kids.
Yeah. I'm just going to the chat real quick. One versus CPU says they're all butt faces. I think he's talking about the Empire, all those jokers there. Where was the other one here? Oh, this is JW, although he says his name is Gaming with Miles, which I've got questions. I need to find out what that means later. He says, got to say, not a fan of Jonesy's subheader tonight. It's always Sid's fault. I blame all of this on Sid. Now, funny thing is, I changed my name. So originally we got on, I saw mine said Sid's a B-I, and then it had a bunch of expletives afterwards. Because I'm with her. I think it's Sid's a terrible person, but I ended up changing it. I felt it was a little bit harsh.
This time it wasn't her fault.
It was her fault. Yeah, you're starting to sound like a separatist.
Well,
all right. Let's get into Project Necromancer. So Emerie gets the lowdown now he's like, okay, fine, you're in, kid, kind of thing. I guess that's how it works. And says
yeah, the promotion was pretty unassuming. Like, all right, fine, whatever.
Yeah, you make a good point. I have nobody out, so let's get started. Emerie now has access to all of the assets. She has access to the vault, and she now controls the specimens of the project. And at that point, we open in and we get to see the specimens, which of course are the three kids we've been talking about: the green one, the blue one, and the red one. Right. And they all have high M counts. Got a lot of Stranger Vibes things going on here. Stranger Things vibes from this, with the kids being experimented on and all that stuff. I'm sure there's some parallels there, but it's not the first time this has been done. But he does mention that few adults are left that have these characteristics, which I'm thinking, okay, well, you killed them all, so I don't know what you're looking for here.
Or you recruited them into the Inquisitorius.
Yeah, Inquisitorial program or Vader, one of the two, or Order 66. Yeah, you murdered all of them, so yeah, it's kind of hard to find these people by.
Well, they are a little bit less willing to go, without issue. So,
right, yeah, all of that was really kind of it's hard to listen and hard to watch. They're just basically taking advantage of these poor children. Says the kids are unaware. I would hope so. And we get at this point kind of a very material explanation of what's really going on here now. Like, this has been the most concrete evidence that we've gotten so far. And I'm going to just quote this and we'll kind of break it up. This is Hemlock talking. He says, as you know, M count cannot be directly replicated from the source. Meaning, if I take Palpatine and I clone Palpatine, he's not going to have the same M count. Okay. Now, however, Nala Se knew of another way, which is why she aided in Omega's escape. The young clone's blood is the only binder that's proven to be compatible with their DNA to recreate the M count levels. So, same scenario. So, let's go over the scenarios. If I clone Palpatine, I don't get a high M count. If I clone Palpatine and then I infuse Palpatine's body with high M count blood, he's still not Force sensitive. This is my interpretation now. Now, if I infuse that same blood, Omega's blood, into Palpatine's clone, and then I take Palpatine's blood and I put that in there, now that binds it together, and now I have a clone of Palpatine with the high M count, and that's how we're going to bring him kind of back to life as Project Necromancer. Is that your interpretation? Is that how you read it?
Yeah, and this is kind of what we speculated a few weeks ago, is that it had to be like compatible blood types, or you have to have a willing host. And this is where the clones make a lot of sense, because you were able to mass replicate them. And so it makes sense that's where you would start, because you know you have something, you have a very stable environment, you have a very stable template. It's a little watered down at this point, so maybe that's why they've had some challenges, but that's why that makes sense, that that's where they would want to get in first and see if they can make something work from that. And you just have to find that right mix, because there is a little variety to them. As much as they're the same, there's still some uniqueness to them, apparently. Now, I don't think this necessarily says that Omega does not have a high M count, though. They didn't come out and say that. I think last episode with Asajj heavily hinted that there is something unique about there. So it could be that this is still a unique combination. And clearly it is, because she's the only one who's been able to successfully bond with the DNA or with the midichlorians of another being. And we don't know if that's Palpatine or not, but it could be one of the kids or something like that. So at least a successful host was found at the very least.
Yeah. All right. Any questions on that? All right, we're going to go on. Next slide, please. All right. So he then says that Omega needs to be found. They've got to test her. The testing has to continue. And he wants everybody to get everything ready, because once she's captured, they're going to put her back into the system.
It's going to be a party.
On. Yeah. Foreshadowing there that is going to happen. Okay. And then, so we get our first taste of these little specimens. And this is this little girl, Emerie, or Eva, who says, "I like your glasses." Very cute. She asks what her name is. And this is where Hemlock steps in. He's like, we don't talk to the animals, right? No, no personal interactions, as he says, of course, because that's not going to scale very well. He says they're scientific assets, nothing more. And then at that point, we see the green Maryland, is it a Maryland boy who sees that they put the data pad in there as kind of like the key card to get out. And he's taking notes, and you can sense that he's got an idea of what's going to happen, which ends up horrible and tragic for him, unfortunately. Anything on that? Because we're going to swing back over to Tantus and get into the Cad Bane stuff.
Nope.
All right. So back on back over to the mountains, not on Tantus.
Right.
Back over in the mountains area, this, we got this very cute scene, a lot of oohs and oohs and ahs as the kids are playing. The mom's playing with the kid, and you hear the spurs. And once you hear the spurs, that's going to be Cad Bane, of course, outside the door. He opens the door in very Cad Bane form, shoots the mom, no questions asked, stuns her,
right?
Yeah, stuns her, right? And then Toto, who's always nice was it Seth Green? Did you see the credits? Was he credited as again?
I didn't stay around from the credits, but I'm assuming so.
Okay, it did sound like him this time more than others, but Seth Green and as Toto flies in, pulls out his little M count reader, and they test the kid. Definitely high midichlorian counts. Puts the kid inside, kid starts crying, gives him the toy. We have a little funny moment where he's like, "I did it." And Cad Bane doesn't give a crap as he leaves. And then before they head out, he, of course, pays the Aqualish and, sorry about the mess kind of thing. Now, the question about, just in all seriousness, though, the M count device or whatever, the analyzer, the tester, I would think that Cad Bane, he's been around for a very long time. He's of that era. And while I don't want to take anything away from Ventress, like, it feels like this makes sense. Like, Cad Bane probably has one of the things laying around. I mean, if you are if you're one of these, what were they called? Omega or Alpha? What were they called? The bounty hunters and level 1, whatever it was, bounty hunters.
1, right.
It feels like you probably got to have that tool to qualify as one, I would think, right? Otherwise, you're bringing people in. They're like, "Hey, dude, this doesn't have a high M count. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go get another one," kind of thing. You have to have a way to verify this. So all I'm saying is Cad Bane probably is the kind of bounty hunter that I would expect to have one of these M count things if he didn't create it himself.
Well, and remember, Cad Bane was stealing Force children back in the Clone Wars too, because these programs started back in the Clone Wars.
Yep,
back with Children of the Force episode, I believe it was called. So it is pretty consistent. So that he would have one is not surprising. I think with any bounty hunter that is taking these jobs, either the Empire has issued them, because I don't know that these are super accurate around, how many, what is the actual M count, but it could just be, say, did it pass a threshold and you get the green light if it's just beyond a certain amount, and so it's more of a pass-fail type of device than anything with a lot of analysis to it. But that Cad Bane would have one. I think Asajj Ventress, I mean, she does have a history of some bounty hunting at the very least. So it could be that she has one. We don't know if these are really ubiquitous. They don't seem like they would be on the shelves of every Walgreens or whatever. But at the same time, if you are force sensitive and you come across other force sensitive beings, you could reason to doubt that you would have something that would help you test your, your curiosities if there was something that piqued your interest or something that caught your eye.
Yep. Okay. That's the end of that. I'm sure we'll get more Cad Bane here at some point. But let's go back over to Mount Tantus. And this is Emerie's first day in the new role. So she walks in first and to see SP54, who is Eva, and she's going through the morning test, right? She's getting her blood drawn. She's being tested. Eva introduces herself to Emerie and then asks, what happened to Nalase? And of course she says, well, she's no longer part of this project. And Eva says that Nalase was going to tell her that when she was going home, which again this is all the stuff that's just pulling at your heartstrings, because these kids are never going home. They're going to die here unless something more happens here. And I think Emerie knows that too. Like the reality of it all is really starting to set in. It's starting to get really heavy on her shoulders. And of course she says, I'll look into it kind of thing. And I don't know that she believes or knows whether or not she can actually get any information about that. I think she probably knows what her destiny truly is. But she says, I'll look into it. And of course, Eva's like bright-eyed and like, oh, thank you, Dr. Carr. We're going to get an answer.
Oh, she had like the cutest voice too. You just felt I'm so sorry, child.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty hard to listen to and watch. And then she goes into the next cell, which is SP32. He goes to the same routines. And just as he's about to get his blood drawn, he decides to grab the data pad and makes a run for it, sends off the klaxons, alarms are going off, there's red lights, it gets really scary. He gets to the door and of course he can't get out. Everything goes into lockdown. And this is where Emerie kind of runs over to him and so he tries to get him to calm down. Says, you're safe, SP32. He screams, that's not my name. They said I could go home. I just want to go home. And of course, Scorch then comes in and does what he would do, which is set phasers to stun kind of thing.
Yeah, he just shot him. Yeah.
He shot him. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. I like that Emerie fired back at him like that he's only a kid kind of thing. Like, how dare you? Why did you do that kind of thing? And what was his response? I was following protocol. Good soldiers follow orders kind of thing.
Well, and he referred to him as a specimen again, too, just to prove the point that the good doctor had to point out to her earlier, too. So,
yeah. So no feelings here, no emotions. They are just specimens, lab rats, as far as the Empire is concerned. And so they take the boy back to the room, and he doesn't get a free pass. He still has to be tested, just like everybody else. So they continue doing his testing, and then Emerie's just kind of staring. I mean, she's probably just shocked that they're even doing this, even after everything that's happened. And she's got this look on her face, and the camera just kind of holds on there for a little bit. And I got to think she's thinking, holy crap, this is worse than I thought, or, not at all what I thought kind of thing. But any thoughts around what might have been going through her mind?
I mean, it makes you wonder, like, what the difference now is compared to when it was Omega. And it wasn't just because Omega was helping. She was a part of the team. She wasn't necessarily a prisoner. Yes, she was a subject, but they didn't classify her as such. I'm just curious maybe it's just kind of seeing it that these are actually kids in detention effectively, and they are being tested. They are being poked and prodded and everything else, but they were doing the same thing to Omega too. So
yeah,
what was the catalyst this time around, or was it that she had been able to disassociate with it previously because Omega was actually contributing rather than just being subjugated? And I think Dr. Hemlock's words, specifically saying, these are easier to subjugate, right? So they adopt their imprisonment a lot better, and you can feed them with false hope and lie to them and make sure that they're compliant without the worries of an all-out revolt, like an Andor-style revolt, where these scenes kind of reminded you a little bit of Andor in some ways too, but without the ability to actually do anything about it.
Yeah. I wonder, do you think maybe she sees everything was fine because up until this point, everything's been clones or Omega, and they were in the lab. They were bred for this, right? I'm not saying she's been desensitized.
Well, it was normalized. Yeah, it was normalized.
Yeah, I mean, it's been normalized, right? And now she's going in here and like, wait a minute, these aren't clones. These weren't lab experiments. These were kids that had real families that were taken, and they're very small, and they're treating them like this. I think that was probably one of the distinctions of course, and why she's suddenly shocked that this is actually happening.
Well, right, and they were bred for purpose too. They were preparing them, they were training them, and these are the clones rather, to achieve something and to go out and then fight. Whereas these are clearly, like you said, lab rats. I mean, these are clearly just to be experimented on, and I imagine her mind is racing about what's their fate going to be, and she probably shudders a little bit, has to dial that back a little bit. You just see the abject horror on her face, like her jaw drops, especially when Scorch shoots Jax, and you can just tell that everything is just not sitting right. And she's starting to have some kind of PTSD too. Of I think when she talks to Nala Say, she sees herself in these kids now, and some of that subjugation that she had of whatever the tasks that she was doing, but probably much worse. But she's having to relive some of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Steph had a question. I didn't mean to skip over that. She says, I wonder what would happen if they gave Omega's blood with high... I've seen if they put the M count into Omega's blood, would she become force sensitive? I think the short answer is no, not immediately. But, there's still more that goes into being a force sensitive, right? You can still have an high M count, but may not be able to do much with it. It's just potential. Yeah,
at this point, who knows? I think it's probably one of the answers too. We don't really know what Omega specifically is capable of, but also what are they doing? Because we also know that, if you remember for an episode from a few back, they had talked about, well, they're breeding larger creatures or other things. So what else are they doing, and what other monstrosities are they cooking up? And are they baking M count into some of that too? I mean, who knows what they could be making at this point?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. One Up versus CP says, now I think Emerie is going to turn when Omega talks to her. I think so too. I think that's the out here, and we'll get to that at the very end about how do we get back to Omega. And JW says, Star Wars has done it before, but I always find it fascinating. They frame clones as more empathetic compared to their human counterparts. Emerie versus Hemlock is another example. That's been a very consistent theme throughout all of this, especially in the context of, again, thinking back where we were prior to the prequel trilogy and hearing clones, probably didn't think much about it. And they did a good job of making them very, very human by everything from giving them names and having them adopt names when they weren't necessarily given names to begin with. They were given numbers. All of that plays into that. So it's a good call out there.
Yeah, forced servitude never feels good.
Exactly. Hey, Katya. Katya's with us. Okay, so let's go over to the conversation with Nala Say. You mentioned it a little bit. So Emerie heads out. Oh, no, I forgot. She says, Dr. Carr, is Jax going to be okay? You can see it all over her face. She doesn't think that, this is going to turn out well. She can't even look the kid in the eye and says, he's going to be fine. He's not going to be in trouble kind of thing. And she says, you'll see him tomorrow, which of course doesn't happen. And then we get the visit with Nala Say. And Emerie comes in. She's obviously got questions. She goes in to see her. She tells Nala Say that she's seen, quote, the specimens. She uses that word. She says, they're children like I was. Was your plan to discard them too? That was a heavy line, because I don't think we hadn't talked about it and hadn't really put much thought into it. But outside of, hey, there's another female clone, I almost got the sense of like, okay, maybe she really was an accident. Like they weren't expecting to create a female, and they're like, well, they can't have this in the army. Get rid of her. Go do something with her. And someone said, no, at least put her to work somewhere, right? Put her behind a desk, right? I mean, lower her to the worst possible thing because she is female. And I think I almost got the sense that she felt like she had been discarded at that point because of that.
Yeah, I mean, we know the Kaminoans didn't tolerate defects, right? And we haven't really had any clarity around how they view Emerie.
What qualifies for a defect, right?
Right, and we don't really know how they view Omega or Emerie at this point either. We don't know how they view the female clones that would have come out of these batches, because again, they are exceptions. But then so was Clone Force 99, the ARC Troopers. There were other variations that happened as well. But we don't really have a clear insight about what it is or how they view them. And I actually like that because that mirrors our own society back, forever ago. It seems like forever ago. I know some of this still somewhat exists, but basically, well, if they don't fit the mold, then you cast them aside and you find something menial for them to do so they can contribute, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have a way. But I also view this as more as Emerie kind of vying for mom's attention a little bit too with Omega, and a little bit of sibling rivalry of sorts of and we had this, and the reason why I say this is because early on when Emerie and Omega first interact, Emerie challenges Omega, like, what do you trust Nala Say, who has clearly raised millions of clones and had them trained and bred them for war, bred them to die effectively. You trust her over you trust me, right? That doesn't make any sense. You should be closer to your sister than you are to your mother. And now it almost seems like there's sibling rivalry a little bit too. She comes in and confronts mom in some ways and lashes out. She's old enough and confident enough and bold enough to say, are you just going to treat these kids like you treated me? And she has no reason to believe that Nalase is any different now than what she was before until this conversation starts to develop into how Nalase really feels. Like she's like, no, what we're doing here is wrong. And this responsibility now falls onto you because you're the only one who has power to do it. And you have more power than you realize, which is a really interesting comment because it seems like that power is pretty limited within the really scrupulous and scrutiny that Dr. Hemlock has over this project.
Yeah. I agree. Like I took the power comment a little bit different, but I definitely see what you're saying because she is just a small, tiny cog with no power in this bigger machine, right? And so what can she do? I think there's something she can do, which I think is probably going to be the most obvious thing that she can do. But I like that she challenges her and says, "What will you do, Emerie?" Right? Like you're in that seat now. What are you going to do about this? And she does kind of make it clear that also that she has favorites. So I'm going to call it favorites because she says, "Hey, Omega was her primary concern, and all the other clones, everything else really wasn't." Because I think she sees the bigger picture here. Like Omega is kind of that centerpiece. Nothing can happen to her. You have to protect her, otherwise, Palpatine is going to have a succession plan. He's going to live forever, and we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of years of this, and not just a couple that they've now had at this point, right? So she's looking at the bigger picture and understands that they have to stop that, and that's why Omega is so important that they don't get her, take her blood. But the only thing I could think of, at least right now, is she's challenging her to say, look, you have the power within the inside. You can either expose what's happening here, or allow for something like, calling out to someone else, like reaching out to Hunter, or trying to reach out to somebody there, or whatever it is, calling in the cavalry, right? I have a feeling she's going to be the reason why Omega gets out of here. Outside of her, unless you want to put a tinfoil hat on and say that she's going to somehow tap into the Force and connect with Ventress, and that's going to be, how they get back. I mean, that's pretty far fetched, but outside of that, there's really not, there's no trackers or any of that stuff. And I'm kind of spoiling some of our talking points at the very end, but it's got to be somebody from the inside. And I think that, again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, the reason why this episode is so important is because it puts massive chinks in the armor and puts big gaping size holes in the dam that is Emerie's conscious, right, of what's right and what's wrong. And once Omega's back, and now she's looking at Omega and saying, oh my God, they're going to do these types of things to her, if not worse, she's not going to stand for it, right? There's too much already pulling at her heart. And I think she's going to pull the lever, pull the chute, and probably do something to either, again, get Omega out or call in the cavalry, make the Tantus location known so that Rex and company can find it and come in and save the day, kind of thing. And I think that's the power that she's probably alluding to here.
And I like where you're going with Nalase. Nalase has seen the bigger picture. She has seen what the Empire did to Camino, what she did to their kind, and she sees what the lower levels of this project are looking to achieve, right? And all the different types of things they could achieve. And yes, Omega is special, and she's always viewed Omega in a special way. And we still need to figure out entirely or confirm entirely what that actually is. But she has seen, and she knows that she is a catalyst to this program, and to, like you were saying, not just another few years of this, but considerably longer of risk that, when you start to look at why has she changed, and Emerie probably a bit confused, things are kind of on their head, that all of a sudden Nalase gives a care about any of this stuff, when her entire life she's probably not expressed any kind of genuine concern for Emerie or the clones or even their colleagues, right? So why is it any different now? But Nalase has that pulled back, but then in kind of typical parent and coaching fashion, Nalase doesn't give her all the answers. She's like, yeah, what do you see? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to think outside the box? And we start to see Emerie make some of those choices towards the end of the episode.
Yep. All right. So then we see Hemlock and Scorch. They catch Emerie during her break as she's walking through the hallways. It's all very workplace environment, corporate America, if you will. This is where he mentions that the next specimen is on the way later today, which I'm assuming is just confidence that he's got Omega wrapped up, or did you read that as they have another kid coming in?
No, that's the kid that Bane was getting.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yep. All right. Yep. You're right. So that kid's on the way in, which is, tragic because that kid's so much smaller than these other ones, which I think is even
basically maybe not infant, but toddler at the very least, right? Or I guess it's probably toddler. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so let's move over to the Tarkin scene because I wasn't expecting Tarkin to be a part of this series, or not series, but at least this episode.
It was a little bit weird of a throw in, actually.
Well, so what's your thoughts on it? Because I don't know if I felt bad for Tarkin. I never feel bad for Tarkin. He's a total a-hole. He's always been one.
Right.
Douchebaggery at the highest level, but
always wanting the credit. Yeah.
Always wanting the credit. But there was something like kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't say I felt bad, but I was like, dang, that's kind of hardcore because I mean, he's calling, he's like, hey man, and I'm paraphrasing of course, but your budget's out of control here. You better be doing something good over there. What's exactly going on? And Hemlock's like, sorry, you don't have the clearance level. And I'm thinking, holy crap, you just told Grand Moff Tarkin he doesn't have the appropriate clearance level to understand what's even happening. Like, this is probably the one project out of all the projects that are going on. Maybe, I don't know. We speculated there are probably other projects that, Palpatine has divulged to certain people and has, keeps that ultimate secrecy. But from Tarkin's mind, he's got to be thinking, what are you talking about, son? Like, do you know who I am kind of thing? Who do you think you are? How do I not know? But he almost felt it seemed like he was a little dejected. And his only retort was like, well, there better be results. Like, I don't know what the results are, but you better be doing
had the audacity
good.
to name drop the Emperor, right? It's the Emperor's personal interest or personal project.
Yeah, we had lunch, man. You don't know anything about this. We had lunch the other day.
We broke bread. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't expect to see Tarkin on his heels, right? And to be put in his place a little bit, but he's also pushing numbers. And you also get that feeling that Tarkin is always looking for the next project to take credit for and take a kind of, Project Stardust comes to mind, of course, immediately with Krennic, right? And it felt like that same vibe of trying to understand that. But when we think back to the Emperor's comments that some people would find Hemlock's work an abomination and would be concerning, Tarkin is one of those people. Tarkin doesn't necessarily subscribe to all the Force and the wizardry and the sorcery and the witchcraft and everything that goes into it. He's much more ready to put his faith in a Death Star, right? Maybe even the TIE Defender project with what Thrawn was doing, right? Maybe. But he wants to put it in something more tangible to where he can actually rest and feel and have control in his hands rather than something that he can't understand, especially that's equated to the Jedi in some kind of way. Now, I understand that's a little bit at odds with the conversation between him and Vader in A New Hope, but I think we largely kind of set that aside these days because it's so far removed at this point, I think, unfortunately. But it is kind of interesting though that Tarkin. Anyway, I think this is why Tarkin is on the outside looking in though, and why he is not going to be authorized by the Emperor to be pulled in the inner circle. And like we talked about many, many weeks ago, why this circle is exceptionally small. That is effectively just the Emperor and Hemlock and the people around Hemlock that need to know.
Mm-hmm. Calls up I can't remember now if the operative calls up Hemlock or Hemlock calls up the operative, but either way, he lets him know that, he found the Trandoshan, which I'm assuming is Sid, and quote, forced her to talk.
See,
and I think this is where your defense is coming from.
Yes. So I think, look, Sid has hung the team out to dry. There is absolutely zero question about it, right? But in this case, when she was paid off at the end of season 2, she went off into the sunset. They told her, get out of sight, go away. They went and hunted her down for information because she was connected to them. And I'm pretty sure did their worst to get information. I think Sid probably felt really bad after season 2. Clearly she did. And probably didn't want to repeat those mistakes, but I don't know that she was given a choice here. So I'm going to go against J-Dubs. I understand that Jeff really doesn't like Sid, and she has not given us any real reason to have any kind of faith in her. And any kind of redemption arc at this point is probably ill-conceived, but I don't think she did this one willingly for her own gain. I think this was traditional Empire just taking what they want and breaking her in the process.
So I get the defense of she didn't do anything wrong here because she was forced to. I just question was she really forced? Like how much did she really fight and push back? Like the minute they said, we're the Empire, we've shown up, like she's always been scared of the Empire. In my head, they showed up at their doorstep. She opened the door and went, holy crap, what do you want? Where's Omega and Fee? Or where's Omega? And she went, Go find Fee. Fee is over above. I mean, I think she just like gave the information. I don't think she really put up a fight, or maybe she said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
See, I think she valued the relationship with Fee, like to a point where she wouldn't go and give Fee's name. I think I'm gonna be. I don't know. I'm just gonna be nice to Sid for this once.
You
and
like
just say,
Trandoshans. I know you. That's what you like. You're cute.
you know,
on
there's
them.
something interesting
You're
about
sweet on
Sid's
them.
past that I wish I understood more about. That's probably where some of this is coming from, but I just don't think she gave it up willingly. Especially Fee's the closest thing that she had to a bestie, you know, and to like an actual friend. And I just have a hard time believing she would give her up unless it was in the line. But that she just like started listing it all out. No, I think they probably broke a leg, broke an arm, pulled out a fingernail, something like. She was tortured in my mind. So trust me, she got what she was due. If you want to go from that perspective, but I don't think she gave it up. Just here, let me just write it down for you, and you get out.
Yeah. Maybe they pulled her tail and she'll just grow another one, or pulled her arm. She'll grow another one. The Trandoshans are good.
They could have done like they did to Bosk in the comics. They blew both of his legs off in War of the Bounty Hunters. That was intense.
He came
back.
back.
We don't know. He was strapped to a rock on an ice planet too. So
yeah. I don't know. Is she a good person?
No.
All right. So
I'm not arguing that.
So Hemlock. All right, sorry. He says that she gave him the name of the pirate that's been in contact. So that's of course Fee, right? That we get that. And then Hemlock says the other operatives aren't ready yet, and that's where I'm assuming that goes back to the operative that he was looking at the very beginning of the episode. They're baking another one. He's just not done yet. And then says that there's no mistakes. Do not return without Omega. And of course, the operative leaves, and now he's heading over to Pabu.
Now, I started looking way into this way too closely because I was looking at the display that Hemlock had of the CX Trooper, or looked like the CX Trooper, or maybe the next iteration, and the arm was separate. I'm like, man, like phase, like the Dark Trooper phase, like was just in my head the entire time. That, especially whatever he was at the beginning of the episode when he was looking in the chamber with all the red smoke and everything, the very, very dramatic environment, and he's looking at the pad, presumably of the same figure, of the progress of them. Certainly seems like they're breeding them and conditioning them and doing something with them. So could they be using the blood from the Force users and doing some sort of infusion, maybe to Stephanie's point earlier, that there is some sort of project to where they are trying some things to see if it'll take. And maybe that's why we see CX2 with so much ability, and his ability to maybe survive some of these more extreme falls and making some jumps and things like that maybe a normal trooper doesn't make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did, for anybody that's wondering, we've done 2 episodes, full episodes, at least an hour and a half each, on who the hell these guys are.
The Believers,
Yeah, the Believers episodes that we did. And I think they might have been Patreon episodes only.
They were
but if
both
you're a
Patreon.
Patreon member, if you're a Patreon member, we really got into the weeds of all the different levels and iterations of the Dark Troopers, which is, I think, we kind of walked away from the very first episode that we did last year saying these are probably the Dark Troopers. They're going to introduce that project here. And I think that's certainly tracking pretty well at this point.
They're in the Bad Batch collection if you sign up for Patreon.
Oh, nice.
Easy to find. Yep.
Easy to find. Okay. And I was mistaken. We did have one more scene with Cad Bane, and this is where the handoff or the transaction happens. And so we pop in out of Coruscant space, which I was like, whoa, what are we doing here at Coruscant?
Yep.
Cad Bane shows up in the Justifier. Toto brings out the kid. Emerie is shocked, seeing it, because it is literally just a baby. And Cad Bane's like, problem? Like, what's the big deal here? It's just a bounty. It's just a rat. They test the baby. Of course, turns out positive. He gets paid. He says that he's good at his job. Of course, he's captured. To your point, he's captured a lot of these kids, going all the way back to the Clone Wars. Scorch locks up the baby and then heads out. Do you think? I started to think. I was looking at this, and I haven't even done the math, but you think there's any chance we'll see like a baby Yoda pop up in here at some point? Like
No.
Okay. Let's move on.
And Bane did give her a little bit of advice because he can sense that Emerie is the questions that she's asking. Yeah, he's saying the questions you're asking basically are giving yourself away. And so he was very subtle about it. You want to keep that kind of stuff to yourself because you'll get rooted out real fast around these parts.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that Bane's not really on anyone's side except his own, kind of like Fennec Shand to an extent.
Yeah.
And so he's not going to turn someone in the Empire if he's not getting paid. Is not his business. But he was not above giving a little bit of advice for free.
Yep. We're back over at Mount Tantus, and they draw the blood. Emerie's looking over it. She leaves the baby. This is all heartbreaking stuff, man. And then this is where SP32, where I think Eva asked where SP32 is at, and says he's been isolated. So standard operating procedure is that he's isolated for 2 days after an incident like that. You flip over to Eva's room, and more blood is drawn from her. She can't even look at Emerie at this point because she's so upset that she lied to her. And so she tries to ask her, like, is everything all right, SP54? Eva? She says, you lied. You said Jack was in trouble or wouldn't be in trouble. And then Emerie kills the power of the entire area. I mean, everything just goes black and dark. And I mean, this is where it just was like, ugh. Painful.
And now the cell doors are coming down to keep them in the room. Before they were open. So
yeah,
very much a prison now.
Yep. We go back to Emerie's lab. She inserts the blood into the little machine there. She's looking at all the kids, scrolling through, comes across Omega's. Again, this is where I felt like she was looking at it going, well, at least Omega's free, right? At least I don't have to worry about her. She's not here anymore kind of thing. She opens up the compartment, pulls out the little Tuca doll, and this is where Emerie then takes it back and puts it out there for Eva so that Eva, when she wakes up the next morning, the doll's laying outside there as Emerie is watching from high above. And that was, if that wasn't apparent enough, if this episode wasn't apparent enough, these are the kind of things that are probably going to get her in trouble, but at least signal that she's not, she's going to do something good. At some point, the light's going to come out and she's not going to be able to deal with this. There's no way. I mean, this is going to, I wonder if she is going to get in trouble too. Like they were probably okay with it with Omega. Maybe not. They kind of took the doll away then, but they certainly don't want her, patronizing with these kids, right? Or fraternizing, sorry, with these kids that are specimens.
Yeah. And from Hemlock's perspective, if Emerie proves to be another turncoat, he's kind of running out of people to throw at this project in order to keep it moving. And to keep, folks like Tarkin off of his tail, because he's getting a lot more money, he's starting to get more attention, it seems like, which is unwanted in this type of realm. So, Hemlock's got to really be feeling the noose. So he needs to get Omega in there and get this project over the finish line, or at least past a major milestone, so that he can maybe rest a little easier for whatever his bigger, broader goals are of running the advanced science division or whatever else. So yeah, this is something that he's feeling the pressure. He needs to get it moving quickly. And so that Omega's been found here in the next episode, really big moment for Hemlock.
Well,
he's losing control and doesn't realize it. Or maybe he does realize it and he can't really do much about it right now.
The more you tighten your grip,
the more
stars through your fingers.
It was sweet though that Emerie still had Omega's lunchbox. That was unexpected when she's running the centrifuge and everything, and she pulls. You're like, oh my gosh, it's Omega's lunchbox. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's sweet. I'm glad that Emerie kind of made a connection with someone, and clearly she did already because she gave her back the doll, before she left Tantus. But it was sweet that she kept it and didn't let it get incinerated or something else.
Yep, that's the identity crisis. She's not going to be able to follow through with any of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think she's in over her head at this point.
She has turned to the good side.
Yep.
Put another tally over there.
All right, point of no return. So we open up on this lunar surface. Did they ever say the name? I didn't get a chance to look at the data. I was so busy today. I didn't look at the data bank to see if they usually give us like the names of planets and places.
I did not get a chance to look it up today. I know it wasn't posted yesterday.
Our question came in from Avi Aki. Says, did she get her blood tested? I'm not sure. Let us know who you're talking about specifically there.
Emerie?
We'll come back to that. Maybe Emerie. If it was Emerie, then yeah, definitely, because I think everybody had their blood tested. Oh, Omega's sister. Yeah. So yeah, she would have been tested daily. Okay, so we get to this lunar planet, lunar surface. If they ever gave a name, I didn't see it. This is where Fee lands. She's there to refuel. Her and Mel sneak out. They kind of have this little comedic bit where they're walking out and she's, joking around. Of course, CX2 is here because he's on the trail of her now, thanks to Sid, who's a big B. And he goes up there, puts that little data spike inside the ship, starts downloading all of, everything all the places and the routes that she's taken for her ship or whatever. Yeah, he almost doesn't make it. There was a little tense moment there where he was trying to hack into it and wasn't able to do it. He actually sounded the alarm, which no one did anything about. That one droid could have prevented all of this had he
Well,
just
the
said
droid
something.
thought that it was because of what he was doing or what it was doing
was
with
it?
the fuel. That's what he was confused about. It was almost like the bit, what was the comedic where it was always, oh, yeah, where he's in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in the library when they're like doing the stapler and
Yeah.
Indy's like banging the bottom of the floor.
Right.
And it goes boom and it's like,
boom. Did I do that kind of thing? Yeah.
right.
By the way, yeah, the price of fuel, my God, it's just
Yeah,
really
1,600
it
credits.
Depends
Wow.
on where you are in the galaxy. Some places are cheaper than others, but he gets the information, gets out of there. Fee comes back in, and she's got a sixth sense about it. Like there's something not right here. Pulls out her little saber, and of course, nothing happens there. But it turns out now he has the coordinates to get to Pabu. He pulls up his little data pad. This is the CX agent. Calls Scorch and says he provides the update that he'll have a full division. Scorch says, I've got a full division on standby. Just let us know when we need to show up.
They heard your feedback last time.
Right, yeah, like don't send 2 ships. Send the entire division now. They've learned
Send a
their
whole
lesson.
Star Destroyer.
Yeah, whatever you got to. Yeah, they sent a whole Star Destroyer. About time. That's the way to do it. You don't send a couple ships. And then there was 3 markings on the map, and nothing ever came about that I saw. I didn't really get understand why there were.
And
3
they were just a bunch of codes in the list too. They weren't. They didn't really translate to anything that you could figure out what they were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just weird.
Some of the planet drops that Fee and Mel were talking were some of the ones from previous episodes, though. So those are kind of Easter eggs. Those were fun.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, we get to Pabu. Again, nice, beautiful establishing shot of Pabu. And we're back on the docks. The Bad Batch are sitting there loading up crates. And when they were loading up crates, I was like, oh, I guess they're leaving, because I did not expect them to be like, all right, we got to get out of here kind of thing. I thought they were going to settle down there. Wrecker wants ice cones. Typical. I think that's come up before too, if I'm not mistaken. But all of the imagery and the scenes we're getting are really great, because we get to see just everybody at peace, right? There's kids playing and Shep's walking around as the mayor, kissing babies and taking selfies with people.
We got
doing
the
what he needs to do.
3 young clones kind of adapting to a new life. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it was very serene, if you will.
Everything we hoped and dreamed for our clone friends.
Even the monkeys were having a good time. Kids were
always have a good time.
Yeah, they always do. Fling and poo. And then this is where Liana, which we hadn't seen since season 2. I don't think we've seen her this season, have we?
It's been a while, yeah.
But Liana is with her and Omega, and this is where they go into that spire, into the Archeum. And this is where Omega tells her that they're leaving. Of course, Liana is like really upset by this. Can't believe they're doing that. She says that Hunter think this is really the safest thing for them to do, which is, I don't know, just be on the run or maybe join. I don't know what their plan was. I guess maybe they were going to join Echo and,
Rex.
That guy.
Yep.
Rex, thank you. Sorry.
Some secondary character.
Some secondary clone I've never really had heard of. But I would imagine that's what their plan was. Any thoughts on that, what they were going to do? Or do you think they would have just been kind of on the run kind of thing?
Man, that's a tough one, because I think they kind of learned that lesson with Rex and Echo too, that they were a bit on the run, but I think they were probably still better together than apart. So I think they were probably going to go sync up with them, because I think Hunter kind of learned their lesson. Like, staying in one place is nice. It kind of works for a while, but at some point you have to move on, because the Empire will catch up to you, because they're hunting you actively. They aren't going to leave you alone. They're not going to lose interest. So I think going back over with Rex and them just kind of makes more sense, until Rex maybe makes a decision saying, look, you guys are just severely jeopardizing what we're trying to accomplish, which is, yeah, we're kind of aligned in that journey, but we're also building something here, and you guys are bringing some heat that maybe we don't want. But I think Rex would have been maybe a logical step for them to go do, to at least sync up with and help them reestablish before maybe they find what the next thing is.
Yeah. Sidestep question here. Do you think there's any chance Boba will show up? We've talked about this, and now that we're, four episodes away from the finale, any chances at this point, do you think?
I think chances are pretty low at this point. I think if we would have seen him, this would have been right around that wheelhouse. I'm also just trying to figure out how he would fit in. Mm-hmm. And but again, we know we have Juggernaut. We have some other episodes that are still going other places. So do we bump into other characters that we know? I think it's always on the table, especially with this writing crew and the way that they love the callbacks and they love integrating other characters. But I think at this point, we're probably pretty set on the cameos at this point. So
I think so too. Like, I don't see him showing up, but there is something. I do want to see them meet up now. Like, but I want Omega to be past all of this though, right? Kind of be her own person, and then for them to meet up and be that story be told in a separate book, novel, another series, whatever it is. I do want that. I want that meeting to happen. So
I mean,
I'm not going to rule it out, but just not in this series.
And again, seeing an older teenager, a young 20s Boba Fett, I mean, there's going to be a lot of interest in that type of content, especially if it were in an animated form. I think it would be really, pretty compelling.
Yeah. And now, so going back to the scene that we're at, so they're in the Archeum, and this is where, of course, this is where they leave objects that mean something to the people of Pabu. So there's all kinds of relics. And I forget, there was a whole episode where they talked about why they do this. And of course, Omega is going to give her offerings or offer her offerings. And she decides to donate or place the Tuca doll as well as Tech's goggles. And the Tuca doll is very significant, right? It's very symbolic of this small kid who has grown up and is shedding that, right? It's, as a parent, when this happens, it really hurts sometimes to see your kid suddenly put away a toy that meant the world to them. Meant
the stuffed animals get put away. The security blanket goes away.
It's Toy Story 3, right? Toy Story 3, and that whole tale of like, it just breaks your heart that that day finally comes. But for Omega, it's definitely good. I mean, it shows the growth of her character that she's willing to part with that, because that meant everything to her. I mean, how many scenes did we see her alone and scared and just hugging that doll the entire time because it was really the only thing that she felt? I mean, she went and recreated her own doll. She recreated that thing when she got to Tantus. So to see her shed that, and that symbolism of adolescence gone and shedding that youth and kind of growing up, really cool. And then of course the Tech goggles, for me, that was symbolic of just moving through the stages of grief, right? Letting go of that. Like, okay, she's been holding on to these. They probably all have been holding on to these. It meant something. There was something sentimental, something symbolic of actually holding them. But to finally let it go and let Tech's memory go, says a lot as well. And now hopefully that is enough to put these people that think that Tech is somehow a CX clone or whatever else. I mean, the guy's dead. Let him rest in peace. Hopefully that's enough for them to get there. But did you have any other takes on that? Do you agree with the assessment there? It
was really sweet that they want to leave something of them at Pabu, because it's the first place that's felt like home besides the Havoc Marauder or maybe even Camino for Omega. So that they want to leave their mark of something that says we were here. But also I think it invites you and connects you back to the place if you go back and revisit it, later on in life. So I think it was really sweet. I think it was really important for them to establish that they did put roots down here. They do feel like it is home. It is something that they have truly accepted and welcomed into their own hearts. Not just the people of Pabu welcoming them in, but they've actually extended and it's been very reciprocated, and it's very bi-directional for both Pabu and for the Bad Batch. So I think it was really nice that they did that, and Omega, of course, is the one to articulate it in a more meaningful way by leaving objects in the shrine or in the remembrance area.
Mm-hmm. We go back. We're still on Pabu here, but this time we now see the what's his faces, the CX clone ship fly in,
in the only cave that you can hide. Yeah,
I was thinking. I mean, was it the Havoc Marauder had a sensor that went off or something? Right. I think they showed that. So, but I'm thinking Pabu doesn't have anything like that, and I guess they wouldn't have to. I mean, they're not. I mean, I know they're not really living in secrecy. I think they're just living in isolation, and that's the difference, right? So there's no reason for them to have necessarily an air defense system or that. So because who
they don't have any enemies.
Them?
Yeah,
they have no enemies, right? They're just trying to be alone. So it makes sense that they wouldn't have kind of a fair warning system or warning system sorts. But yeah, it is kind of weird that anybody just kind of comes and goes. Ships. I mean, you can't. I don't know. I'm not going to poke holes in this at all because I get it. I mean, it just feels like if the ship's coming in, they probably don't come in that often. And so people would then pick their heads up and go, oh, who's that coming in? And why are they parking in a cave kind of thing, or where the caves are? But whatever, it's fine.
Well, and the ship had a cloaking device. I mean, it clearly said on the screen in Orbash, cloaking enabled. So
okay,
a small ship with a cloaking device. There you have it.
They checked the box. Get off my rear end.
But yeah, that was the exact same cave that Asajj, of course, parked in. You could see even from the outside, it had the exact same structure and same ledge. So it's a great place.
Right.
So it's a perfect place.
It's a place all the locals know about, but you got to ask the local, otherwise you won't know that it exists.
I don't know. Apparently, it's like for the smugglers. It's the only one on the smuggler ring. So Pabu's just got a hideout place for everyone to go to.
Yeah, I did like that. Even with all that going on, like Hunter's Bad Batch ability kicked in.
It's so inconsistent. That's
It
like
is very
miles away.
inconsistent. Yeah.
Miles away, he gets a hunch that something's wrong, but then something's around the corner and he can't tell. So.
Exactly. So yeah. But it's always good to see it when it happens. So glad that he had kind of his spider sense was tingling that something was not right, but he says he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was going on.
Right.
CX2 is then kind of overlooking them on a high point there. He notices, Crosshair and Hunter. He spots Omega, and then he confirms that Omega's there and calls in the Scorch. And Scorch says, hey, capture Omega. And if you need to eliminate everybody else, go right ahead. Feel free. They're all expendable at this point.
So CX2 is like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Shep and Leanna say goodbye, of course. And he says, they say, well, you're welcome back here at any time kind of thing. And this is where, again, I wasn't expecting when he pulled out the explosives. I was like, oh my God, is he going to do this? Sure enough, it blew up the Havoc Marauder, which I don't know, is surprising again. Rest in peace. But, thankfully Gonky and Wrecker were able to get out into the water and flee. So
it was nice, yeah, because they were arguing before, but Wrecker jumps down the ramp, grabs Gonky, and throws him in the water, and saves the day.
Saves the day. Unfortunately, he's unconscious, and so he will no longer be a part of this episode, which is fine, because I think he would have probably turned the tides a little bit there. But then we get to see Deke, Mox, and Stack, I guess is his name.
Yeah, Stack.
They're back. We haven't seen them in a while. And, they take Wrecker up to Shep's place. Hunter Acid, AZ kind of patch him up real quick because they're going to need him. Of course, that never happens. And then the Star Destroyer arrives. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Here's the scenes that we've been talking about forever since the trailer came out. Love that shot of that kind of upward shot of it just looming over the spire there.
The spotlights coming down.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They deploy 4 gunships to start with. We get the scene from the trailer where they're landing and the stormtroopers are coming off. The whole division is starting to unload there. And there's just more gunships coming out and they're just kind of circling the area. And this is where Omega's guilt kind of kicks in. This is where we kind of, predicted this would happen, right? She starts to feel like they're attacking Pabu because of her. Hunter says it's not her. It's the Empire's fault. They're the ones responsible. Of course, she doesn't see it that way. She's not going to see it that way, right? We know who Omega is. She is going to take it very personally. And to that end, she's going to try to do something about herself. She's going to try to solve that problem because she feels she is responsible. Crosshair makes an astute observation that they're disabling all means of escape and they're jamming their communications.
Yep.
Which you know what that means, Jonesy.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion.
I was waiting all night to hit that button, and I'm glad it's finally over. So yeah, they're disabling the communication, and then Hunter says he's going to go try to steal a gunship and call Echo for help. Crosshair and Omega are then heading back to Shep's to stay with Wrecker. So all kind of hell is breaking loose at this point. I wasn't sure where the hell this thing was going to go this episode at this point, but it certainly kind of spun up real fast and things escalated pretty quickly here. Any thoughts on any of that?
It was very Luke on Endor from Return of the Jedi. Some of that same kind of theme, right? I'm jeopardizing the mission. I shouldn't be here. Turns himself in. Leia says, just flee from this place, run away, basically. So a lot of common vibes, but yeah, a little prescriptive in what's happening, but also, like you said, it just makes sense. Omega, she just wants to take care. And it's also a way that they can at least have an opportunity to trace back to Tantus. And we'd speculate on this before of how are they going to get back? And one of the ways to do that is to get captured and somehow tracked. Now, it seems like that didn't happen very well. Crosshair missed the shot or didn't have enough on the shot. And of course, she got found out with the tracker. That was expected. But so, how are we going to get there is going to be a little bit different story. But that Omega came up with this plan, again, very, very much in character what we expect from her.
Mm-hmm. CX2 he's pretty much in command at this point. He then orders all the stormtroopers to start searching every one of the homes. They're supposed to find Omega at this point. Shep does what he's supposed to, which I don't know that he's going to do. I mean, of course, he tries to flex and say, "Hey, I'm the mayor here. Who do you think you are? You don't have this kind of demand an explanation." Yeah, good luck. That's the Empire, buddy. They're not going to give you anything. And he says, I love what CX2 said. He's like, I haven't done anything yet, but I'm happy to, right? That threat that they have no defenses and they've
Just
got the
waiting
Empire
for it. Yeah.
all over them, right? He's just looking for an excuse to lay that entire place to waste, which I thought was going to happen. Basically, I mean, he was willing to just let Pabu burn until he says, this place is going to burn until you hand over Omega. So we flip over to Shep's house, and Omega and Crosshair, they're there with Liana, AZ, Wrecker. You know, Omega watches. She's looking down below. The stormtroopers are sitting there harassing people and doing all kinds of horrible things. And this is all just starting to weigh on her shoulders and her conscience. And that guilt is continuing to grow. Hunter had a great moment here where he was able to kind of hijack one of those drop ships until, of course, they shoot the pilot.
Dude, CX2, that was a crazy shot.
It was.
Man,
good stuff.
Pinpoint shot right in the neck.
I like the pilot was like, I can't shake him. It was a callback to episode 4, which I thought was great. And of course, the gunship lands there in the water, and thankfully Crosshair sees that he's alive. He jumped out at the last minute there before it hit the water, which it didn't blow up or anything. So just stay on it. None of these ships don't blow up most of the time.
Yeah, but CX2 thought he neutralized, because later on he says, I've already neutralized 2 of the 3, so you only have to look out for the 1. So clearly a little overconfident of what he's able to accomplish. But again, when you see a ship going down over the ocean, you assume that you took care and you did your job well.
Yeah. And this is where Omega decides, like, she kind of has that heart-to-heart confrontation with Crosshair and is like, hey, I need to allow them to capture me. She can't let the people suffer. They know that she's there. Like, it's not even a question at this point. She comes up with the whole idea of, look, I'll keep a comm device on me, and Crosshair's like, they're going to scan it. They're going to find it, kind of thing. Right. But she's like, yeah, we still got to try. Like, we have no other choice here but to do that. The backup plan is for then Crosshair to shoot the tracker onto the ship. And that way they'll be able to find her once she gets back to Tantus. Crosshair hates this idea, of course. He doesn't like it. It's pure, very risky. But again, going back to what we said so many times now over the course of this season specifically, is that he respects her. He understands she's got good, sound judgment. Like, there really aren't a lot of options here. And so he goes along with it. Begrudgingly, he goes along with it because it really is the only viable option that they have. It is a huge Hail Mary of a chance at this point. But man, again, when I talked about earlier, the very beginning, the opening, saying that she's grown up so much and this was really a great episode, that line where she says, focus on the bigger mission, Crosshair, I'm just a small part of it. I would say the Emperor probably disagrees with that statement, but Omega doesn't know that. But she's absolutely right. All right. Crosshair is so focused on her, and he's not thinking about the bigger picture. And man, I mean, talk about maturity at her age. Yeah, role reversal to
throwing
step
your
up
words
and say,
back at you.
Yeah, throwing them right back at her. It's exactly right. So I loved it. It was beautiful, poetic in a lot of ways there.
Yeah. So Jeff's comment in the chat, he had made the comment that they didn't rescan Omega, and I thought about this too. They knew that they would scan her, they would find the tracker, and they take it away. You think there's any chance that she had a secondary tracker on her that she would have under her hat? Because she did take her hat off before she started meditating after she was taken with CX2. Or do you think there's anything like that? Or do you think, no, verbatim, they took the tracker, Crosshair missed the shot, they're going to have to go find her a different way? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like the ideas. And I've while we're here, because let's just talk about the other option that I've thought about, and that would be somebody like Hunter sneaking on board or being on the ship, right? I get it. All that seems really cool, and I'd love to see it, but then it takes away from that episode. It takes away from at least my own thoughts around why we got Identity Crisis and the idea that somebody from the inside is going to have to help them. And I think it takes away from Emerie's kind of character development in some ways, if that really turns out to be the case. And then what do you need Emerie for? I mean, she could still have a part, and she could still help aid and abide, get them getting out and, foiling the Emperor's plans or the Empire's plans. But I like the storyline, the narrative of Emerie using the power that she has, to Nalase's point, to set things in motion for all this to happen, right? Finally feel empowered about something in her life. I like that story and that narrative more than just, she had another device, or Hunter's on board, or she taps into the Force and calls Ventress, kind of thing. I don't know. I think it takes away from that. So that's where I thought.
Yeah, I think the Force thing is probably no chance. I think Hunter on the jet. Well, I think it would also very little because we see him in just a couple of episodes with the rest of the team. So that seems unlikely that he would make it even part of the way, get shoved off, and then find a way back to the team. Seems like that's a lot of time to get back to where we were at. I'm a little concerned about, does the Empire just leave Pabu? That seems unlikely. Usually when they're there, they occupy and they're there to stay, at least in some level of that. So how do they get off the planet in the first place? I think that's probably what we got to figure out next episode. So I'm kind of going back to, I mean, and to your point, this gives Emerie has a purpose now, right? Emerie has something that she's starting to feel a bit more passionate about. And I think that she's the catalyst to help Omega get free, and maybe to help her brothers get free as well, and do the right thing and stop this madness of a project and stop the behemoth of what the Empire is. Now that she's starting to see it for what it truly is, I think is a great opportunity for Emerie to be able to do some of that. Now, one follow-up question I have from you, and I can't remember if we talked about this in the final hype. Did we do a death watch for Emerie? I don't recall if we did.
For Emerie, I think we did. I think we said, my recollection is, I think we said either Emerie lives or Nala Se lives, but they don't both die.
Oh, okay.
I think we felt one of them had to live.
Okay, that does sound familiar. Yeah. Any perspective shift on whether Nala Se or Emerie's going to make it out of this series now?
I think I still feel like Nala Se dies because the program's got to die, right? And yeah, you could argue that without Omega, the program doesn't continue, and that's the case. I mean, we clearly see that by the time we get to the Mandalorian. They have not figured this out. That's likely because they've never had anybody like Omega, but I think it's also because they've never had anybody like Nala Se still around. So, I'd like to see maybe she sacrifices herself for Omega, like she does a very motherly thing for all of the clones, for all my babies kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be kind of special if she did something similar or something like that? But I would expect Nala Se to perish at this point, and Emerie to either live and continue on, but I can't see them both dying, right? And to be fair, Emerie still doesn't know a lot, and I don't think she's going to have the wealth of knowledge or expertise that Nala Se has. Even with the next 6 episodes, I don't think she's going to garner that. So, yeah. Okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I still think Nala Se. I think I was probably on record saying Nala Se bites it. And I got to be honest with you, I think Emerie's kind of 50-50 right now, because depending on what she does if she's the catalyst for Omega to get free, Hemlock is not going to have any quarter for her. Now, granted, he would probably imprison her and just torture her and still make her do whatever it is that he needs them to do if he's able to make them do it. Otherwise, he'll kill them. So I don't know. I think she's kind of on 50-50 now. I mean, I think there's a legitimate shot where they both don't make it out of the series, but I'm still with you that seems like we're piling up bodies at that point, especially if we lose one of the Bad Batch at the same time. And while that would, I think, be appropriate for this series, it's not always exactly Star Wars where so many people don't get out of the series alive. Typically, most people get out of the series, if not everybody. So
except Rogue One, but yeah. Point taken.
But that was what, 2016? So,
I know. Yeah.
It's been 8 years since we really had any kind of meaningful loss in Star Wars, I think, at least from a rising body count, where they just seemed to, like, the big names seem to pile up on us, or the recognizable name within a specific series pile up on us. That just hasn't happened quite yet.
Yeah. I was only joking. I mean, Rogue One will always be the exception to Star Wars. There was a very meaningful.
It was preordained in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. We get it. Is Batcher more like a mammal or a reptile? Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know.
I'm going to say mamtile. That's my answer.
He does have very leather, or she rather has very leather-like skin, it seems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Very hide-like.
JW says, I think I agree, Albert. The better storyline is the route you're thinking. If Nala Se dies, I need her to have the slowest dying words of all time. That's all I ask. She's going to have like, I'm going to say it's like the sloths from what was the animated series that Disney did? Zootopia.
Yeah, Zootopia.
You know what I'm talking about? You have kids, or you've watched the movie.
And of course, it works like in the DMV or something. It's like already the worst place to be.
Yeah, that's how she's going to die like that. Alex says, any chance of us seeing Ruck? Why are you? Get out of here. We're not seeing Ruck. Stop asking these questions. Look, and there's Steph. Are you ever letting that go, Alex? Are you? All right, enough of that. He got his 5 minutes of fame, or 5 seconds of fame. Back to the storyline. This is where Omega finally walks in. She says, stop. She hands herself over take me and leave the island alone. These people are here. I mean, very grown up, words being used here. Situation big of her to do. They place the bindings on her. They don't, they find the one tracker, and then Crosshair starts making his way to get in position to fire the tracker. We get to see Hunter lives. He comes ashore, and Batcher's, of course, there to greet him. He heads off into the city, and I think this is where people were speculating that maybe he jumped on board, or he's, I don't know, holding on to the ship or whatever he's doing.
He's in the next episode with the rest of the with the Bad Batch, so I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, probably not going to happen.
Right.
And then they start marching Omega. She starts kind of going down to the docks. It was really cool too. Like, I don't know if they're going to come back and revisit this or make mention of it, but just what do the people of Pabu think at this point, right? Seeing this little girl who's basically given her life for them being marched through the city, and they're watching, bearing witness to the savior that is Omega. I mean, there's just something really powerful about that this little girl did this. So
yeah, and they're not a people that say, hey, you got what you wanted, now get out of here. They would actually have compassion for Omega and rally around her,
right,
like they have with the Bad Batch. We saw some of that trepidation when the Bad Batch first showed up, but ever since then, they've integral part of the community, and the community comes around you and supports you no matter what happens, right? So
yeah,
I think it was very telling that they didn't just start to basically rebel against Omega and the Bad Batch. Like, they very much, I mean, again, they didn't really defend them in any kind of way because they didn't know what was happening. It was all by surprise, but they didn't turn on them at the same time.
Yeah. CX2 marches her up to the top of his ship, shoves her inside. Of course, everything's on fire at this point. Going back to your question, or I guess I don't know if it was a question or your statement, but I do suspect that we are going to pick up here on Pabu in the next episode, and I would expect them to have left a contingency there on Pabu. Now, the easy answer is, they could revolt. The people could stand up and fight the Empire back. That might be one option, but there's nothing that would prevent them from calling Rex and Echo at this point either. So they could suddenly just show up and wipe out, get everybody off the island, or at least liberate the island. And then, they move on to the next chapter or whatever. But
as long as they're not still, blocking communications, I guess, in some kind of way. But if they've left anyone there, I guess they could continue to block it. But if they bailed, so I guess that's a question. So do you think they left the contingent there? Occupation is now underway, or do you think they just bailed?
No, I mean, that's been their MO. It was always been that way. Even in Legends, they would do that. They'd go and invade a place, and if they didn't have a presence, they left a presence, and that presence would continue to grow. It was just the way they kind of crept. It was just the way they would creep across the galaxy and spread like a virus. So I do suspect that they would do something similar. I just can't see them leaving and being like, okay, these people were harboring this felon, so to speak, right? A fugitive. But they're fine.
I'm kind of curious at this point. I'm almost of the opinion that they got their prize and they might just bail it. Because again, you're just literally an island on this planet. Why would you waste your time? You feel like you took care of 2/3 of the Bad Batch. So are they that much of a concern at this point? You got exactly what you needed. You need to escort that back to base. I mean, I know CX2 did it, took her back on his own, but I could see, to help the story along and not belabor it, they bail and they start trying to repair, because they've got to get off the planet now too. So how do you do that without stealing an Imperial ship? There's ways to do it. So I'll tell you what, we'll cover both bases. You'll say they'll stay. I'll say, I don't know how strong, I'm not really got a lot of conviction around this, but I'll say the Empire probably bails.
Cool. Yeah, we'll win that one then. The other thing is too, like if they do bail, that certainly plays into the overconfidence of Palpatine. We talked about this on episodes before, about Luke's comment of Palpatine's confidence being his weak spot, right? That trickles down at some point, and they get so big, and that's why that's kind of what Andor was talking about too, right? They just don't think about these things. So I can see it both ways. I think given the sensitivity of what's going on right now, and knowing that they probably only took out 2 out of the 3 operatives, or they know one of them is still alive because they never got Crosshair. So it feels like the right thing to do, the smart thing would be to leave a force there, but I don't think they would leave a big force, and it's certainly nothing they couldn't overcome by themselves, or figure out how to get communications going again and then call in, the big boys to come and help them out. So
yeah, and I guess maybe the counterpoint to that is, from Hemlock's perspective, they have the prize that they need, and their resources are limited, and they need to make sure they can continue to focus those resources wherever they need to deploy them. So you could see where possibly he would be so single-minded on Omega. He's like, forget about that stuff. Just come back here. We need to really lock down security here. We've got our prize. We have to make sure she's protected. All hands on deck back home. No one knows where we're at. So let's just come back here. The Empire will come, the rest of the Empire, Imperial Navy or whatever, the Army will go out there and figure it out. You guys all come back here because you're my force. So I can see that's another alternative, because Hemlock, we're starting to see a little bit of desperation. And when that happens, usually, like we were saying before, they tend to want to grip tighter, and they usually want to bring that circle even tighter around them to try to prevent leaks, prevent this type of thing from happening again. So I could kind of see it both ways. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. The MO of the Empire is definitely to leave a contingent and subjugate it. But Hemlock might not be operating in the same mode that the Empire would in normal circumstances, I guess is probably where I'm coming from.
Okay. Well, Music Train already said it. He says, I think the Empire is there to stay.
I mean, everyone in their right mind is going to say the Empire's there to stay. I mean, just,
It's the right thing. It's
I'm
a
with
smart
you.
thing to do.
That's
but they're not.
Yeah, if
It
you
was
want to
so
be
many
right
smart
99
decisions.
times out of 100, go that answer. I totally agree with you.
So CX2 calls Tantus back. We missed the whole fight, the whole sequence was very tense. Like Crosshair missing that shot. It was, and they don't.
And your heart just dropped. You're like, no.
It does. But what I was going to say is, I don't think I didn't get a sense that it was because of his, shaky hands.
Right.
And I felt like if they would have done that, that would have been like, oh, that would have hurt even more. It just felt like it was, he was so distracted. There were so many things going on. They were shooting at him.
It was just
trying
an
to
impossible
dodge.
shot. Yeah.
It was an impossible shot kind of thing. But I do almost kind of wish they would have played into the whole shaky hand thing. Like just like it finally came back and bit him when he needed it most not to. It did.
And Crosshair took a shot and killed a trooper too on target. So I think his, he seemed to be better, whatever he's been doing to, train or meditate or whatever it might be. Maybe we've seen him at least cross a bit of a threshold and to where he is a little bit better. But yeah, it was really hard to see that shot fall short. But it just seemed like he's running. He's not in optimal position. He had to rush the shot. Everything's on fire around you. You're getting shot and chased. Like nothing's in your favor to make that shot. And we could argue that maybe Crosshair of 2 years ago would have made it. But at the same time, this ship is about to hightail it out of the atmosphere. They're not in any kind of, they're in a rush. So that you not make that shot is pretty understanding, I think. But still, wanted to see him make it because I was gonna be like, yes.
I know it would have been sweet if he'd made it, but again,
it would have been a rare uplifting moment in these 2 episodes, right? Because we got like 0 uplifting moments out of any of it for the most part. Yeah. Well, I guess we got one at the end of the last one with Emerie and the kid, but still, it would have been something, a little silver lining that we could have clung hope to, right?
Yep, it was the Empire Strikes Back of the episodes.
Yep.
So. All right, so let's wrap this up. So CX2 calls in to Scorch and tells him, hey, target acquired. I'll be home, keep the lights on, start dinner kind of thing. Right. And Omega sits down in the back there, and this is where she takes the helmet off and she starts doing her breathing exercises, the meditation that Gungi had taught her. Gungi, I already forget now how it was officially pronounced, but
Gungi, right? Whatever.
Gungi is how I say it. And ship jumps off into hyperspace. And so I think we've already talked about this. Like, I don't buy that she's somehow going to connect with someone. Is there a storyline there? Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying it's far-fetched. It's probably like a 2% chance that that's happening. And all it would be is, like, we've seen this before, like, Luke and Leia, right? That was probably a little bit even more severe where he was reaching out to her. But Jedi Force sensitives being able just to kind of ping and have a sense of direction of where somebody might be, that would be the most I would expect from this. This is not going to be a Ventress, hear me Ventress kind of thing. Right. And I don't think Ventress is going to be able to kind of really, I mean, she might get a sense of it like, oh my God, Omega's here. And, they pinpoint it or they go start looking in that area for it. But I'm not going to rule it out. I just think it's very low probability. And again, either way, that along with Hunter still being alive and the tracker still being on there, or she having yet another tracking device, I think that all pulls the seals away from Emerie's story and what ultimately I want her to see. Again, going back to the whole power thing, having her be empowered to make a change happen in a life that she's never had any power to do so ever before.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually was all of it.
Let's see. There's a ton of stuff here. I think we've covered all the questions that we had, at least what was going on. There are some things that are being thrown in the chat. I'll just kind of jump to those real quickly. Let's see. Why is Omega, this is from Twilight Knight. Why is Omega so important to Nala Se? It's an emotional bond to Omega, but Omega shows love towards her brothers, but not Nala Se. I think she has. I mean, it was very fleeting, and she didn't have a lot of screen time with Nala Se originally. Because, but you think back to season 1, we talked about it, that episode, the very first episode, there was, in my opinion, a very motherly, daughterly kind of bond that was going on there.
Yeah.
Right. So much that she allowed Omega to leave. I think, whether that's reciprocated as much as Omega, I don't know, because we just haven't had a lot of screen time with them, and they never really sat down and talked their feelings out, so to speak. But I do feel like she probably does look at her as the mother. I think a lot of the clones, I probably shouldn't say that. Like Emerie probably does. Clones that have worked around Nala Se and have been part of that group probably do, but outside of that, probably not. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, you could. There's a lot of ways you can go. But like, why is Omega important to Nala Se? Again, I'm with you. We saw that really early on, and then we've had a lot of time apart. But I think even when Omega came back into Nala Se's life, Nala Se sees something, and we could argue that it's either the view she has of the Empire and what they've been doing, especially early on in season 1, and then now what's happened ever since and what she's seeing on Tantus, that she maybe that connection with Omega is more of a protective nature at this point, but there's clearly something about that. So is it the Empire that's that, or is there something truly unique about Omega? We don't know what the relationship is between Nala Se and Emerie, because I would like to think that maybe at one point there was something a little bit more there with Emerie, because again, Emerie and Omega are unique within all of their brothers, right? They're the only two that we've seen that are female. So is there something unique where Nala Se does feel like she has a special connection with them or bond just natively as more of a mother, where these are two, not millions of boys? Right. You had just the two. So they're unique in that way. So I think some of that is also there too. But I think also it's the perspective she has of how bad the Empire is, and knowing that she has something she can do, and that she could also help her, if we want to go this far, her children, to be able to escape that and survive some of that at the same time.
Yeah. And then One Up versus CPU makes a good point. Says Grogu needed to be on that spot. That was the summoning stone or whatever the heck that thing was.
And he had training too. I think to your point before, like Omega is not going to specifically call out to someone or like Luke did or like anybody else has. It would have to be someone just kind of finds her in the Force, not that she reaches out and finds someone else. So she would just be a presence and someone would see her and do that. And then you got to bring in that other character. So could that be a Ventress? Yeah, it absolutely could be. I think to eliminate that from all possibility, I think would probably be, short-sighted in that way. I think everything's possible at this point, but I'm with you. With the characters that we have, there's a lot of story that we could pursue with that without having to start to bring all of the Force into it with Omega specifically, and start to have arguments about, well, how would she be able to do this if she didn't even know she had the Force or whatever it might be? We don't even know if she has the actual high M counts at this point or midichlorian. So there's a lot of unknowns. And like you said so many times, the Emerie angle, I think, is where I find that the most interesting and compelling at this point. And that's the angle I would like to see progress in that way.
Sorry, I got to call this out because he's going deep now. Speaking my love language here, it says Tython, the same planet that thing Elzar used to contact Avar, comes from the Tythonic resonator. And so what he's referencing is in the High Republic, there is a scene where two Jedi, very powerful Jedi, mind you, weren't able to communicate with each other because they were separated by great distances. And on top of that, there was a wall, a storm wall, too hard to explain, but separating them.
Right.
And they were only able to talk to each other through this Tythonic resonator, which is like an artifact that they had found. So all that to say is like, yeah, to the point, like it is very difficult, even for the best of the Jedi, to be able to just kind of talk to somebody clear across the galaxy. So yeah, I think if there's anything here, is like you said, it's going to be her turning on a beacon of sorts for a very small, brief pulse type time, and her not even knowing that she's doing it. And in the off chance that somebody like Ventress or someone else happens to pick up on that kind of thing, that's about it. But yeah, probably nothing else there. So And then there's Hard Countered at the very end. You're late. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for being here. You got a shout out. Another 5 seconds of fame there for Hard Countered. So, hey, but we have more 5 seconds of fame for a lot of other folks that were with us tonight on the live show.
Yeah, thanks to all of our Patreon members, as well as everybody coming out to the streams. The last couple of weeks have been really awesome. A lot of new people out there, a lot of people in the background, a lot of people watching, and fantastic conversation. So cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to the show, thank you for listening. If you'd like to come out and join the conversations, we're doing this on Thursday. So come out for the last few episodes and join the chat with everybody else. And you could be like one of these amazing people. J-Dubs, Kathy, One Up versus CPU, Rebel Scum, Sky, JJ Skywalker, Steph, Rural Farm Boy, Risk, Katya, Alex, Music Train, Aviaki, Rita Reborn, Twilight Knight, and Hard Countered. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. And if you are curious, cantinacast.com/YouTube, you can watch it afterwards. If you like what you're seeing, what you're hearing, we would invite you to subscribe to the channel, give us a like, leave us a comment about what your thoughts are. Where do you think this next episode is going to go? Who do you think is going to help Omega escape? Is it Emerie? Is it going to be through the Force? Is it a Visage? Who do y'all think it's going to be? So leave us a comment and let us know your thoughts. And like Albert said, we do try to go out there and like those comments and interact with them as well.
Yep. Programming notes. This Sunday, we'll be back with the Way Station. So Ed and Fred will be back with me to do Way Station Sunday night around 9 p.m. Central. And then afterwards, Jonesy and I are going to hit the Patreon episode of the week. And we are going to break down the Tales of the Empire trailer. So that launched today. We'll probably share some thoughts here and there throughout, of course, but that'll be a deep dive into the trailer. We've got a lot to talk about in that trailer. Oh my goodness. And that was only really 2 showcased episodes out of like, what, 5 or 6 episodes that they've got lined up for it. So We'll do some reckless speculation around what else we would want to see as part of this Tales of the Empire series that's coming out. So that'll be around 10 p.m. Central, exclusive to our Patreon subscribers.
Yeah,
all right.
And speaking of Patreon, we hope everyone's enjoying the content over there. Albert put a brief novella out there around the Acolyte and some things around some of his speculation. So if you've not had a chance to go check that out, please do. They finally added chats to the desktop version of Patreon, so I can use my desktop version and start to interact more with y'all as well. So hoping to see some more conversation that way and put some fun things out there. I posted a picture of you and me, Albert, from 2019, but with AI googly eyes because someone wanted to see it. So thank you, Adobe, I guess. We put it out there. Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to it, I think, or dreading it. I don't know, one way or the other.
Yeah, so we're doing that, and we're showing coffee cups, I think, on Fridays now, Fridays or Saturdays. So if you have a Star Wars mug, come on, join Patreon. Post it, show us what you got, join Discord, throw it in there too, and we'd love to have the interaction with y'all. So we certainly appreciate that, and we hope you're having as much fun as we are.
Yep. Okay, guys. Thanks everybody for being here, and hopefully you'll be able to join us on Sunday night for the programming. Then take care.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.